Hello everybody, my name is John Tierney and I'm Project Director of the Historic Graves Project. We work with community groups in graveyard surveys, and for the next 15 minutes I'm going to talk you through how we approach those projects and how we approach the survey of historic graveyards. Our main focus has been in Ireland, but we've done graveyards also in England and in Scotland, and we found that common themes prevail. We're currently in a 5-kilometre lockdown here in Ireland, and I'm lucky within my 5k area I have 3 graveyards. For the purposes of this talk I've gone to Ardmore graveyard. It's an early medieval site and a good place to show our field survey methodology. So where is Ardmore? If we start in Chester and then head over across the sea down to the centre of the south coast, you'll find Ardmore. And as I zoom in here, we'll find the graveyard. Some very interesting earthworks on the outside here and more there relating to the ecclesiastical site, which we think was D-shaped back onto the stream here. But the graveyard that I'm going to be looking at the moment is here. I start the video in this area here, do a bit more recording here and then finish down there. Before I take you to the site, I want to show you the digital part of what we do. We've built a web platform using the Drupal framework, and you can find it at historicgraves.com. If you go there, go into the map and you'll see the area where most of our surveys have taken place. We've done work across the water too, but by and far for the last 10 years most of our work has been here in Ireland. Currently we're working, let's say, down this area, and as we zoom in you can see that you click on a cloud and it becomes a number of pins, and if you click on a pin it gives you the name of the graveyard. If you then click on the name, then it takes you into the graveyard database. Within the graveyard database then we have locational information, we have the signature photograph, we have some descriptive text, and then the grave memorials, the mortuary monuments, are presented in batches of 25. And just to show you what an individual mortuary monument looks like, if you click on the monument name, it has the graveyard code and it has the number. If you hover over the mortuary the record photograph, you can see detail then as it zooms in. Below that then the full inscription is transcribed, and then we have biographical detail for the people recorded on the headstone. This is your typical Irish rural graveyard. It's a high quality one. There you can see a medieval cathedral. The church, the chancel end of the church here is maybe 8th-9th century. The cathedral then is later, probably connected with the construction of the round tower, which is off to the left. This small structure here is potentially 8th or 9th century as well. And when you look at a graveyard first, and when people first get into graveyard studies, they think, oh, it's a bit daunting, that it's quite disorganized, and how do I make sense of all this? But in fact they're usually highly organized places. The church building is east-west, and in the Christian faith we bury our people facing east. We bury our people facing east for this, because the rising sun represents Christ. The sun is in persona Christi, so we use the grave plot every generation, and we very often put marker stones at the head of the grave. In this case you can see headstones, and in some cases low uninscribed grave markers as well. Because we reuse the plot, then these strong rows form facing east. The rows become north-south, and that's key to how we actually survey the graveyard. Now the key method we use for recording in graveyards is based on the use of masking tape and a marker. Every single mortuary monument gets a number, and we stick the number on the side so it's not in a record shot, and all we do is we write on a series of numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So write the numbers on like that. Usually we start in the southwest corner of the graveyard. What we find there is that if we start in the southwest corner, because mostly they're facing east, and we number then from left to right along each row, we get to the end of a row, we go back to the start of the next row, and then we come forward again. I'll just give an example for how we do it here. So let's say we're at the start of a row here. Because we're coming down the hill, the number gets stuck and we stick it on the side like that. Next fella goes here, he gets stuck on the side. We number mortuary monuments, we don't number grave plots. Because I'll train a pair of people in the community group and they'll go off and do the numbering, and then I train another pair of people to do the photography. How the photography works is we use a very simple camera. There's a GPS chip in this camera. It's just a standard almost family camera. Costs about 300 quid. You turn it on, you wait for the GPS to kick in, and then with the camera looped around your wrist, brace our elbow against our side, and we take one photograph per grave monument. And we fill the frame and we center the image perpendicular to the headstone, and we're usually aiming for about a hand's width at the top of the stone. So I'll show you here on number one. Now we only take one photograph. So here we are, stand back, I'm about 2 meters back, and take the photograph. This camera numbers its photographs on a daily basis, so photograph number one is of headstone number one. Step down then, check number two. Usually there's a spotter and the team, and the spotter is checking for which is the next number. Perpendicular to the headstone, I only want a hand's width at the top. Fill the frame, center the image, take the photograph, check the number, 2 of 2, 3, this fella. Leave the ornament in because it shows some of the character of the graveyard. Usually on a survey day with a community group, we'll have maybe 200 headstones. We'll have all 200 numbered by 11:30 on the first day, and we'll probably have them all photographed in by 12:30. Now, sometimes we have to stop taking photographs by 12:30 because the sun rises in the east. If the sun has gone behind the headstones by lunchtime, then we won't photograph the headstones when they're in shadow. We upload those photographs into our online system. The uploading actually generates the database record, and it's live then on the web, and then the local community sit down at their own computers in their own home and they type in the record sheets, and I'm going to show you how to do a record sheet now. So we're after coming down the hill, and we were just up there, and now we've come down against the Banacon, this 8th-9th century structure here. The Saint Declan is buried inside in this structure, and surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, has a very strong observance even till today. The Saint's Day, which is 24th of July, I think, is still a big festival around here, and a lot of young men and older men, are still called Declan to this day. So it shows the continuation of that tradition. The other thing I wanted to say was that we publish online to a web platform, so we're highly digital, highly technical, but really if you were to ask me what are the main tools that we depend on, masking tape you've already seen, and the other one then is just your standard lever arch folder. Every graveyard gets its own folder because every graveyard generates paperwork. The main record sheets that we use are here. They're based on your standard archaeological gravestone record sheet. I'd say ours are based on Mitem. So we have record sheets there. We then use the register sheet as well, and the register sheet is for is how we keep track of which headstones are done. If everything is numbered and there's 200 headstones, this sheet tells us if number one is photographed, if the record sheet is done, and so on. So we keep track of the progress on a daily basis. And then we also use a sketch plan. The sketch plan is where it's not a measured survey. Funding usually doesn't actually extend to getting a measured survey done, and most of these or didn't until recently anyway. So what we would do is we would do the equivalent of a supervisor's drawing inside in the graveyard. We would do the sketch, the whole graveyard, onto a single A4 sheet. Roughly each line here on this sheet represents one row, one burial row, and we can draw most graveyards on a single sheet like that. That gets scanned, it gets uploaded onto the website, and it's a relative location sketch map that shows the location of the actual headstone. So we've come in for a close-up on this particular headstone, and I'm going to show you how to fill out a record sheet. A lot of headstones you'll read with the naked eye. A difficult headstone takes about 10 minutes to fill out the record sheet, and a straightforward one is quicker than that. So this is our standard record sheet. We do teamwork, everything we do. The numbering gets done in pairs, photography is done with a team of 2, and then every headstone is read by 2 people as well. So you're filling out the headstone graveyard name, or the sketch drawing of what the headstone looks like. So it's just a simple matchstick men drawing. There's little dotted grids on this to help us. So we draw the ground line, parallel sides, she curves up in a wee bit, and then a roundy top. How we read the inscription is very simple. We either use a lamp, a torch, or if the sun is out in the afternoon, we'll use a mirror and we'll bounce the light with a mirror. And we write anything that's inscribed on the headstone at all. So in this case, I check up top, IHS is carved there. Here lieth the body of John Flynn, who Dept, DEP, superscript TD, this life, April the 16th, 1793, age 75 years. We read these together, so if I'm doing this with a partner and if my buddy doesn't agree that that's 75 and thinks it might be 73, we must agree, we must then decipher it together, and we will actually cast the light. We call it going around the clock. We start at 12 o'clock and then we cast shadows from all angles then, 360 degrees all around the particular disputed figure. Memorial type, it's at the head, headstone, number of people commemorated, and then we go over onto the back and we fill out iconography and things like that. It's a local style of a winged head. There's a face there, and that's wings around that, and then there's also scrolling foliage. So if I were to write that down, I would say scroll foliage, winged head, and then in the IHS in the top, the cross is attached, there's a cross attached to the IHS, and then there are 3 nails, which are the 3 nails of the crucifixion. Projects are all about sunlight and about shadow, and you can see the sun is coming out now on this cloudy morning, and it's starting to pick up the detail, and that's the same technique that we use when we're recording the headstones. To wrap up in terms of doing community archaeology and with this as a case study, this graveyard project, I suppose the key things we've learned as field archaeologists, we were very much field archaeologists. When we started doing this project, we thought it was going to be all about stones, when in fact it ended up being about people who were buried in the graves, but then also the people who were doing the surveys. And right now we've got over 250,000 people recorded. We have about 800 graveyards recorded, all with tiny funding, but it worked, and the reason it worked is because the community agreed with how we were doing the project. Community groups are our equal partners in this project. We're experts in reading headstones and in controlling large amounts of data and getting it online, but we're not the local experts. I live down here, but I'm only here 20 years. I've no people buried in this graveyard, so I'm not an expert on this place, but the communities that we work with are. So that's the joint expertise. And the other thing to remember is that you've always got to be positive. If you're coming at something from a conservation approach, you can't go around saying no all the time. You can't go around being negative all the time, because people will just turn their backs on you and they'll go ahead and do what they want themselves anyway. At least here in Ireland has been our experience. So you've got to engage positively. What does that mean? Start every sentence with the word yes. It's yes and, not no but, I suppose is how we do it. And what's the other thing that we've learned? The other thing we've learned is that we need to zip it. We've a lovely, well, I don't know, it's lovely, but in Ireland, in Irish, we have a phrase called éis de bhéal. Zip it is kind of one of the key things we've learned as archaeologists in the field. Don't be talking all the time, listen. The more time we spend listening, the more we learn and the more work we get done. So we record graveyards. Within the graveyards we record grave memorials. From the grave memorials we record people, and then we record stories. And we do that, and we've continued to do that for the last decade in cooperative projects with local communities, and primarily based on the fact that we zip it and that we then share responsibility for getting the works finished with the community group. It's not our job to finish it, it's their job to finish it. And about 80% of all the projects do get finished by the community groups themselves. So I hope what I've had to say has been of interest. I see how archaeology emerges for us here in the community, and I can say if you're going to do community archaeology, then equal partnerships, that's the main thing.